Hi, everybody. So we're really excited to be here to talk about spooky books and spooky writing and spooky things, all the fantastic spookiness that we have. My name is Samantha M Clarke, and I'm thrilled to be here today with three other spooky authors, and we're going to answer some of the most popular questions that we get when we're talking to classrooms and we're talking to students. First, guys, let's introduce ourselves to everybody. So going around on my screen, clockwise, let's go with Cynthia first. Why don't you introduce yourself and your book?
Hi, my name is Cynthia Reeg, and I'd like to write stories for middle grade readers. And the two that I have out right now are From the Grave and the sequel, Into the Shadowlands. And this is set in a monster world where a group of misfit monsters are trying to prove that they are monster enough just the way they are, and that often involves some humor, some adventure, and maybe a lesson or two learned along the way. So just for lots of fun. So let me toss it on to Lorien then.
Hi, I'm Lorian Lawrence. I am the author of The Stitchers, which is the first book in the Fright Watch series, and it just came out in August, so I'm really excited. It is about Quinn Parker, who's a 13-year-old runner. She's on the track team, and on her morning runs, she starts to notice that something is really up with her neighbors. They don't seem to age, and she starts to come up with all of these, wild theories about what they could be or what they could be doing. And so she enlists her friend Mike, who she may have a crush on as well. And together they investigate and find out the truth of who these oldies are and what they're up to. And it's creepy.
Exactly the way we like it. Angie, how about you?
Oh, hi, guys. I'm Angie Smibert, and I'm the author of 6 novels altogether, but the last 3 of them are middle grade spooky. And so it's the Bones Gift, the Lingering Echoes, and the Truth, which just came out this summer. And together these are called the Ghosts of Ordinary Objects series. And they're about a 12-year-old girl named Bone, who is growing up in 1942 in a small coal mining community in Southwest Virginia. And she's discovered she has a special gift that she's not too crazy about, but she can touch an object and see the ghosts inside of it, basically. Or she can see how somebody else has, life has been once they touch this object. And so she's trying to deal with that and solve various little mysteries in each of these books.
So fun. So, and my name, as I said earlier, is Samantha M Clarke, and I am the author of this book, The Boy, the Boat, and the Beast. And it's about a boy who wakes up on a beach. He doesn't know who he is, where he is, or how he got there. All he knows is that every time he tries to leave, everything turns scary. And there's all kinds of scary things that goes on. And as he tries to find his way home, he has to overcome all of his greatest fears. And there's also, as it says in the title, there's a beast, and it's even on the cover. So maybe you can find it. And so that's my book. So let's get on with some questions. And before we begin, I just want to do a shout out to my local Austin Public Library. I'm actually wearing the Austin Public Library Van Show t-shirt. And Van is a puppet who does these fantastic interviews for the Austin Public Library, and he interviewed me when The Boy, the Boat, and the Beast came out a few years ago, and it was so much fun talking to this puppet. And so libraries are fantastic places to get wonderful spooky books. And one of the things that I'm always hearing from librarians is that the #1 most wanted, most requested book from kids are spooky books. So let's get down to answering your spooky questions. So one of the most often asked question is, what made you want to be a writer? So let's go in counterclockwise now. Angie, what made you want to be a writer?
Well, I think I've always loved reading and stories, even as a little kid. And I have distinct memories of like my parents taking us to the library every Saturday and coming home with like grocery bags full of books. And I just, just love the stories. And I would start thinking of them and, like, okay, I'm going to write my own, but I'm going to take a little bit of this one, a little bit of that one, stick them together because I think this would work better. And but I didn't start writing the stories down until I was an adult, and because I figured I needed to make a living at something and wasn't going to make a living as a writer. But of course, what am I doing? Yeah. All right, Lorian.
I always loved reading as a kid, and it didn't really occur to me that you could make a living or do get paid to tell stories. And I was always telling stories. I'm a big old scaredy cat, so I'm afraid of everything. And so anytime I would let my imagination kind of spin out, I would, make these really elaborate stories about kind of everyday things that were happening, but I would make them spooky and scary and scare myself and have nightmares. And one day my mom was like, just write it. I think I was around 8. I was young. My mom was like, just write it down. Just write these stories down. And so I would have these little notebooks, and I would write all my stories. I remember I wrote my first novel when I was 8, and it was called Thriller. And just was ridiculous and silly, but it kind of gave me a starting place. And yeah, I guess I owe that to my mom, Cynthia.
That's fantastic. And there aren't really any silly stories, because as long as you're having fun, and that's the whole point. That's wonderful. Cynthia, how about you?
Yeah, I like how this is all revolving around libraries, because I loved reading and writing so much when I was a kid. That's what I wanted to do for my career, and that's what I did. I worked in school and public libraries. And as Samantha said, of course the kids asked for spooky books. So what was one of the probably second or third books that I wrote? From the Grave, because I knew kids would love the monsters. But yeah, I just loved reading and writing so much. It had to be part of my life. And I loved orchestrating the words, putting them together, making the characters come alive, starting with a blank page, and boom, there's a world, there's characters, there's problems that keep getting worse and worse and worse, and just creating fun. How about you?
It's amazing. So for me, I was kind of like Lorien. I didn't know that I could become a writer. I always thought that the names on book covers were like these magical people who lived in clouds or something. They weren't real people. And I don't know why, I never put that together. But when I was a kid, I never had an opportunity to meet a real live author or even see one like on TV or anything. So I never really realized that was something that I could do. But I loved stories. I wrote plays and then had my puppets do them. I had a local newspaper from my street when I was a kid that I would write, talking about, all of the most important news, where the dogs would poop, which lawns they liked the best, all that good stuff. And yeah, so story was really kind of where it came to me. I just wanted to tell stories. When I grew older, I would babysit. I would tell stories to the kids make up stories about the clouds. And so it started with that. And then it wasn't until I, was much older that I realized, oh, maybe I could do this as a living. And so all that time that I had been telling other stories, I finally started to, try and get them published. And it worked. Yay. After a lot of rejections, but it did finally work. So now what do you guys like best about writing spooky stories? So Lorien, how about we start with you this time?
I love how, this is going to sound strange, but I love how safe spooky stories make me feel. Like they're I'm going to talk specifically about supernatural because I don't really believe in real supernatural monsters, ghosts, and things like that. So when I read about them, I can be scared, but in a really safe way. And I just remember the first time I ever chose a book for myself. It was an R.L. Stine book. It was The Secret Bedroom. I think I was in like 4th grade. And it was the first time that I chose a book that like a teacher hadn't given me, my parents hadn't given to me, my aunt hadn't given to me. Like I went and I saw the cover, and I still have this book, and it's like this girl and she's looking really scared and she's opening a door and there's a skeleton hand and a green light coming to grab her. And I just remember being like, what is that? I need that in my life. And I read it. I stayed up really late and read it. And then I couldn't sleep for like a week because I was so scared, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I just wanted to like always have that kind of feeling of not necessarily being scared, but just being enthralled and like completely like captivated by a made up world or a real world where there's something like, you know, supernatural going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And that I love that it came from a book that you got to choose yourself. That's so empowering for a kid to be able to choose a book themselves. We need librarians and parents and teachers to hand books, you know, to kids so that they will be introduced to books. But there's something so wonderful about going to a store and actually, you know, choosing one for yourself and going, I want to read this. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. So Cynthia, what about you? What do you like best about writing spooky stories specifically?
Well, I'll give a shout out to R.L. Stine, since Lauren mentioned him. I had the opportunity to meet him maybe about a year before From the Grave came out, and I was so excited, and I told him I've written a spooky book, and he was very encouraging and everything. So happy birthday coming up, R.L. Stine. Master of all spooky books. For me, it's about the fear of facing the fear of the unknown. I think in spooky books, you can do that and still be safe, you know. So I think that's, there's a monster coming up, the monster at the end of the book, right, Grover? But it still can be a little intimidating, and so it just gives you a chance to face your own fears, even though you know they might be coming up. Mm-hmm. You can do that with spooky books. So
absolutely, Angie.
Well, like Lorien, I really like the supernatural books, but I don't like the, Freddy or Krueger kind of things, where, people are doing things that are, nasty and scary, because that could actually happen. But I do like the idea of supernatural in the stories because, I don't really believe in it, but it's a great way to explore ideas. It's in a safe way, but you can also ask a lot of interesting what if questions. What if somebody could see the past in an object, or what if this kind of monster did live, or was a little boy, or you could ask a lot of interesting questions. I think that's what I like about it, because I also like writing science fiction and fantasy, which is all about the big what if. What about you, Sam?
I agree, and I like writing fantasy too, and science fiction as well, and exploring like all kinds of different ideas. But I think what I like best about spooky stories or spooky scenes is when you can kind of parse out like these little tiny bits of information and kind of really make it scary. So maybe if there's a monster in the closet, it's just a little sound first, or maybe there's some drool on the back of the person's neck, and then they whip around, but they don't see anything at first. Those kind of things. I like to build up these scenes with this anticipation, and I think that's a lot of fun to write, all the details. I love all the details in spooky books. So what was your favorite book when you were a kid? I'll start this time. My favorite book when I was a kid is still one of my favorite books, and it is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I still think that I, am going to find Narnia in the back of a wardrobe one of these days. I'm convinced. Every time I find a wardrobe, I have to open it up and look and see. Haven't found it yet. If you guys know where it is, let me know. I really want to know. And in fact, the witch in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was one of the scariest characters ever for me when I was a kid that I had ever read. I thought that if I ever go to Narnia, I would have to steer clear of her because she'd probably turn me into stone, which would be horrifying. That whole idea was terrifying. So that was my favorite book, and probably the book that scared me the most as well. Cynthia, how about you?
Well, I think one of the first books that really opened my eyes to how creepy reading a book could be was this book, and it was a series. It became a series called The Children of the Green No, and it was set in England in a creepy old house. And it was realistic enough, because I'd lived in a few creepy houses along the way as a kid, that when the children that moved into the house started seeing the spirits of earlier inhabitants of the house, or maybe a ghost dog or enchanted tree in the woods, it just kind of got under my skin and made me look twice, before I rounded the corner at home down the hallway. And so that was one of my favorites, The Children of the Green No. How about you, Lorien?
I loved Benicula when I was a kid. It was the first chapter book I read. It was by James Howe about like a vampire bunny, and it's told through the point of view of a dog named Harold and his really surly cat named Chester. And it just felt magical, and it was funny in a way that for a kid's book, it felt like, I don't know, I felt like quite mature reading it. I don't know why. And I loved like the magic in it and how it was a little bit creepy, but in a safe way. And our teacher had us write like actual physical letters to our favorite author at the time. And I wrote to James Howe, and he wrote me back this like handwritten letter where he, you guys still hear me? Where he, kind of helped to validate my feelings of wanting to be a writer at an early age. Like I had pitched him, it's really embarrassing, but I had pitched him a book idea. I told him he should write about aliens. I still remember the name. It was called Campsite Fright. And it was about how, like, they'd be on a campsite and aliens would come down. And he didn't laugh at me. He didn't just write, stamp his name. He completely validated my little pitch to him and encouraged me to be a writer. And I treasure that a lot. And I think it's really important for what's happening with the screen. I think we're losing a couple people. So maybe Angie, I'll go back to you.
Well, yeah, I think we lost 2 out of 4 of us. So, well, my answer is kind of the same as Sam's, is that I loved Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe as a kid. But I didn't think it was a necessarily scary story. I was just enamored of like the animals in Narnia and all that sort of thing. But I also was remembering there was an anthology that I read as a young kid that was, I think it was based on like Alfred Hitchcock Presents or Twilight Zone or something. But because I love those shows, I'm kind of showing my age.
I love
because they had like these twist endings to them, so they were kind of spooky, but something happened that you weren't expecting, and I really like that in a story. So,
should we keep going? Should we wrap it up?
Well, let's wrap it up. Let's see, we got 20 minutes in, and I don't know if the other 2 are coming back. So
technical difficulties are such a thing.
I know.
Yeah.
So, if you want to, some of the other questions we could wrap up, like did you have a book recommendation for the readers?
I don't have a copy of it here. It's at home, but Adriana Cuevas is Total Eclipse of Nestor Lopez has been one of my absolute favorite books, spooky or not, this year.
Yeah, that's a great one.
A couple months ago, and I adore everything about it. It's creepy, it's spooky, like there's actual danger that these kids are in, and there's delicious food references that make me hungry, and there's like snarky animals that kind of help the kids solve their problems. I can't recommend that book enough. What about you?
Yeah, that does sound wonderful. I would recommend the book I just finished, called Ghost Boys by Jewel Parker Rhodes. And it's not your typical light, scary book, but I think it's a very kind of important read, and especially nowadays. But what it's about is this young, I think he's 10 or 11, he gets killed by a stray bullet. But he comes back to haunt his family, and he's informed by a ghost, the ghost of Emmett Till, who comes and who is a slain civil rights worker from the 1960s. And so there's a lot of this history in the book. Sam is back. And, it's a very nice read.
That sounds great. We were just doing our book recommendations, and I did Nestor Lopez, and she did Ghost. And
fantastic. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. My computer just shut down.
Well,
I had to like
Cynthia too.
restart the whole computer and everything, and then I had to.
Wow! It was just sleepy. It was sleepy.
It was creepy. See, it was spooky. So, and actually, I was in the background waiting to be let back into the room, and I heard you recommending Adriana's The Total Eclipse of Nestor Lopez, which I was going to recommend as well. So here's the cover. Guys, go get it. Go and get it. And then the other one that I wanted to recommend is Corey Putman Oakes, The Second Best Haunted Hotel on Mercer Street, which just came out and looks fantastic. I'm so excited about these two books. I just got them really recently. And do you guys want to run through the last couple questions? There was also, let's give all of the kids who are watching and who want to be writers or who are writing in school, let's give them our best writing advice. Lorien, you want to start?
I'm a 7th grade English teacher, and we do a whole unit on creative writing, which is so fun and probably my favorite thing that we do all year. And one of the things that I'm constantly telling students is keep your eyes on your own paper. And I mean that literally. Like, don't try to. I did have one year where like 3 boys were all somehow writing the same exact story. So I mean literally, keep your eyes on your own paper, but also like figuratively, don't worry about someone else's journey. Don't worry about someone else's experience or the feedback they're getting or the grade that they're getting if you're getting graded on something. Like, worry about your own journey, because we all kind of fall into, onto our paths at different times, and no right or wrong time. There's no right or wrong path. So kind of you do you, and don't worry about other people's experiences.
Very, very good advice. Angie, what about you?
Well, I also teach writing, but to older kids in college and grad school. But I think one of the most important things for like any writer is, okay, well, don't worry about getting it perfect the first time. I mean, and whether you're, writing in 7th grade or grad school, still writers are worried about like, oh, I got to get the grammar perfect. I got to get this perfect. I got to get the plot perfect. And no, you don't. All writers are good rewriters. Get it down on paper, then go back and you can fix it, because you're going to have to revise it like, 5 or 6 times anyway. So, but that gives you a certain freedom. You can change it and make it better each time you go through. So. Well, and
absolutely,
back.
Great advice. Cynthia, what is your best writing advice that we can tell kids?
My best advice is just don't give up, because it's exciting and wonderful and awesome, but sometimes too it can be frustrating. And it's like anything else. Like I love to play tennis. You know, it takes practice, and sometimes you'll hit a great shot, and then sometimes not such a great shot. But when you keep at it and keep enjoying what you're doing along the way, it's going to get better and better and more fun. And so that's what I say, don't give up.
That's really, really good advice.
Awesome.
And since I can never make up my mind about anything, so I can't give my favorites. I never have favorites. So I'm going to give two pieces of advice. The first is read. Read as much as you can. Read spooky books, read funny books, read dramatic books, contemporary books, read things that you don't even know that you want to read, but just try it anyway. Read graphic novels, read comic books, read newspapers, read magazines. Keep reading. The more you read, the more stories will infuse themselves in your brain, and you'll understand how stories work. Even read stories about different cultures than yours. It's all stories, and we get that into our head, and we learn about characters and we learn about stories through the books that we read. The other piece of advice is to just play and try and have fun. Like the others have said, it can be stressful, really, really super stressful to try and make something perfect. And a lot of times when I hit a crossroads, or I hit like a writing block, and I don't really know where to go next with the story, I've got all of these different options, and I don't know which one I should try because I want to pick the right one, but that's too hard. So what usually happens is I'll spend a couple of weeks just sitting around going, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Instead of just saying, all right, I'm just going to try one and see. And then when I try one, it opens everything up, and it might not work the first time. Like Angie was saying, you're going to revise. I had to revise this book probably like 20, 25, 30 times. So then I try one way, and if it doesn't work, that's okay, because then I can try another way. And the best part is I get to play with all kinds of different scenes and different characters and see what works and what doesn't. There was a character in this that got completely cut out. So you never know. You never know what's going to happen. And okay, so we've got like 3 minutes left, and we have already recommended some books and answered all of the writing questions. But the other question that kids always ask us is, what is our biggest fear? So, Lorien, do you want to go with that one first?
Alligators. I don't like alligators. I don't trust them. They can get you from the water. They can get you from land. I saw a video, one climbing a fence, whipped himself over and got on the other side. So, alligators.
I know, they're super fast, and they're
really fast.
Slow, and when they're in the water, they'll just look like this.
You can't even hide. Yeah, they're like the sneakiest monster, and they're more terrifying than any monster I could ever invent.
Yes, I agree. They are. They're really, really creepy. All right, Angie, what about you? What's your biggest fear?
It might be snakes, and I will tell you, snakes have eaten alligators in the Everglades.
That's true, the really big ones.
I don't like knowing this.
Well,
so
go to Florida.
Does that make you scared of snakes now too, Lorien?
A little bit, yeah.
Cynthia, what about you? What's your biggest fear?
So I'll go from these big creepy things to the little, almost hidden in the dark mice. I'm terrified if mice come whipping around the corner or whatever. It just freaks me out. So yeah, I actually live part of the time in Florida, so yeah, I'm kind of used to the alligators, but snakes still not so much. But yeah, mice are my nemesis. So
yeah, they can be kind of cute and stuff, but they're so quick. Quick things, I think, are my nemesis too. I'm scared of spiders, especially really big spiders. And Cynthia, you're not really scared of spiders, right? Or tarantulas. I'm terrified of those things. But also, which might sound a little strange, but I'm scared of frogs. And I know that they don't actually do anything to you. It's completely irrational, but the idea is that, you know, they just sit there, and then one minute they're there and the next minute they're here. They just jump so fast. One time, I used to live in the Cayman Islands. My parents still live there, and they have a lot of frogs there. And one time I was driving home very late in my mother's car, and we would leave the windows down all the time. So the windows were down, and I was driving home, and I'm in this really dark area, and suddenly this thing jumped out at me from the dashboard, just jumped on me and then jumped somewhere else. And I was so terrified because right at the last minute, I realized that this frog had been in this car with me the entire time and then jumped out at me. I was screaming. I had to stop the car, get out, search the car, try to find this frog so that it wouldn't jump out at me again on my way home.
Yeah,
I
had that happen one time too. In the Amazon, we stayed up in the jungle towers, and the tree frogs would get in and hunch over your shower, the faucet. And
yes, they love that. And now in the Amazon, you've got poisonous tree frogs, so you have to be careful.
Hopefully they weren't. So
yeah,
I made it out alive.
Well, this has been so much fun chatting with you guys. So much fun. I hope you guys who are watching have gotten some fun tidbits, some fun tips from what we've been talking about with spooky books. And if you go to spookymiddlegrade.com, as well as the books that we've recommended here at spookymiddlegrade.com, you'll find a spooky reading list in the menu. And if you click on that, there's a whole heap of books that are all spooky books, spooky middle grade books from the spooky middle grade authors, but also from lots of other authors who aren't actually part of our group, but they're just fantastic books that are spooky that middle grade kids will love. So have a look, check that out. And yeah, we look forward to chatting with you guys again. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Stay safe out there.